Module 6, Slide 2.
I allowed myself to be bullied because I was scared and didn't know how to defend myself. I was bullied until I prevented a new student from being bullied. By standing up for him, I learned to stand up for myself.
Jackie Chan, actor, martial artist, film director. Module 6, Slide 3. Objectives. Upon completion of this module, you will be able to give a general definition of bullying, describe 4 main types of bullying and give an example of each one, identify risk factors for bullying and victimization, evaluate treatments for bullying in light of your school's learning environment, explain how SEL can help to reduce and prevent acts of bullying, design an intervention program for bullying that will work in your school and community. Module 6, Slide 4, Asma's story. As you listen to Asma's story, think about these questions. What kind of bullying does this story illustrate? What do you think about the teacher's reactions? What advice does Asma's friend offer?
Asma's story. Asma is a new student at Manchester Junior High. She arrived recently to the United States with her father and 2 brothers from Islamabad, Pakistan, and was placed in the 9th grade halfway through the school year. Everything about living in an American city is strange and new for her, but the school is her worst nightmare. In Pakistan, she was an excellent student and had many friends, but at Manchester Junior High, she struggles with American English and is exhausted from trying to catch up in all her subjects. The teachers are kind and helpful, but Asma feels lost in the crowded hallways and sprawling campus. All she can think of is how she misses chatting and laughing with her friends as they walked home from school in Pakistan, sharing their snacks and stories. "This is America," her dad says. "You have to work harder." Somehow her brothers are getting good grades and fitting in faster than she is. On top of all this, 2 popular girls in her history class have become increasingly hostile towards her. Whenever they think the teacher is not looking, they exchange secretive glances and stare at Asma's headscarf. "Good morning, class," says the history teacher. "Today we're going to begin by reading aloud one of the greatest speeches in American history. Asma, would you please begin?" Asma stands up reluctantly. "Yes, Mrs. Gilbert." Behind her, Ashley groans softly while Emma stifles a giggle. The teacher shoots both of them a disapproving look and waits patiently for Asma to begin. She tries desperately to hold the book steady in her trembling hands. Softly, almost imperceptibly, the words start to tumble out of her mouth. Her heart is racing. 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent. Asma's voice trails off into silence. "You're doing fine," says Mrs. Gilbert encouragingly. "I am sorry. I don't understand," says Asma. "What is the Gettysburg Address? What is 407 years? At this, the girls erupt into open laughter, along with most of their classmates. "Those are both very good questions," replies Mrs. Gilbert, ignoring the reaction of the class. She writes the word address on the board, explaining that the word has 2 meanings. In this case, it means a formal speech delivered to an audience, and in this particular example, it was a famous speech delivered by President Lincoln at a battlefield near Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, during the Civil War. "Emma," directs the teacher, "please go to the map and show the class where Gettysburg is. Then you can explain to all of us when, why, and to whom Lincoln delivered this famous speech." Emma sulks but does as she is told, while Asma remains standing, nervously awaiting a nod from Mrs. Gilbert to continue. As Mrs. Gilbert focuses on listening to Asma, Ashley secretively pulls out her cell phone and videos Asma as she makes her way through the rest of the speech. One of Ashley's friends sees the phone, laughs, and gives a dramatic fake yawn for the video when Asma finishes. Mrs. Gilbert looks straight at the yawning boy. "That was very disrespectful, Nicholas. You know that you are breaking our class's ground rules, don't you?" But, stammers Nicholas. "No buts," says Mrs. Gilbert firmly. "Emma, Ashley, and Nicholas, I will talk to all three of you after class." Asma sits down quickly, her face warm as the teacher moves on with the day's lesson. She's the first one to leave when the class ends, grabbing her cell phone from the drop basket on the way out. As soon as she can, Asma rushes outside to a quiet spot near the sports field and checks her Instagram account, hoping to hear news from her friends in Pakistan or some encouraging words from her mom. Instead, the video Ashley took of her in history class flashes onto her screen with the words "Pakistani Lincoln, ha 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 ha," typed underneath. As she watches, Asma clenches her teeth and swallows as her eyes start to swell up with tears. Sabah, another student from Pakistan who is 2 years older than Asma, sees her sitting alone, crying. "What's wrong, sister?" she asks gently in Urdu. "Look at this," replies Asma, holding up her phone. "These girls don't even know me, but they hate me, and they're out to get me all of the time. They're so mean. How many other kids are watching this now? I hate it here, and I just want to go home." Asma trembles and buries her face in her hands. "You are being bullied," says Saba as she slips an arm around Asma's shoulder. "Those girls are totally out of line. Have you talked to anyone else about what's going on? Does your family know about it?" "No," Asma shakes her head. "My brothers are happy here, and my dad works so hard to support us. I don't want to seem ungrateful." "It's not about that. You need some help with making a new life in a new school, and we all know what it's like to be on the outside in one way or another. It's really important to help make the school better by speaking up against bullying." Saba smiles knowingly and continues. "You have the evidence in your hand. You should file an anonymous report about this post to the main office. You're not even supposed to have a phone in class. It's school policy, and this kind of stuff is why they're banned. I can show you how to make a report if you like." "Maybe," Asma says slowly. "What would happen to those girls? What if they found out it was me who reported them?" "Don't worry," says Saba reassuringly. "You won't be found out. Besides, you haven't done anything wrong. They have. Like the principal says, there is no room in this school for bullying, and reporting them can help them change for their own good and for the good of everyone. By the way," continues the older girl, "I don't think you've met Jorge. He's on the student council and president of the photography club. Did you know there are all kinds of clubs you can join? Come on, I'll introduce you. When I first came here, I felt really weird too, but being part of a club really helped me to make friends and to feel more comfortable here. Don't be afraid to talk with the counselor or the teachers about what you're going through too. The adults here are really supportive."
Module 6, Slide 5. What is bullying? Bullying behavior is generally defined as unwanted aggression by one person against another that is or has the potential to be repeated over time. Bullying is often viewed from the different perspectives of researchers who study human behavior, mainly in the fields of social psychology, behavioral psychology, sociology, and anthropology. From the perspective of social psychology, bullying is a relationship problem involving peer abuse. In simple terms, bullies act against people they do not respect or like. From the behavioral psychology point of view, bullying is exploitation of a perceived power imbalance. That is, the bully feels stronger than his or her victim. And from the perspective of sociology and anthropology, bullying is taking advantage of another person using methods that are beyond socially acceptable rules, such as physical abuse, name-calling, or ridicule. From all three perspectives, bullying is a form of unwanted aggression that is or has the potential to be repeated over time. Module 6, Slide 6. What does bullying look like? Most people think of bullying as a form of physical violence like hitting, punching, biting, or kicking. But this is only one of 4 distinct types of bullying behaviors. Bullying is often physical, but it can also be verbal, relational, or cyber, or some combination of these, as in the example of Asma's story, in which bullies use a social media platform, Instagram, to bully her relationally. Verbal and physical bullying are usually direct, while relational bullying, for example ignoring or making fun of someone behind her back, are almost always indirect. Bullying behaviors happen in or near virtually all places of learning, even in well-regarded institutions of higher learning. But they can look very different in a well-resourced school in an affluent community than they might in an overcrowded, under-resourced school in a community living with poverty, domestic violence, civil conflict, or all of these. Bullying behaviors are also influenced by culture. For example, direct verbal abuse is less prevalent in societies where it is not normal for people to confront each other directly, but may surface in equally devastating ways by purposefully humiliating or isolating someone indirectly. Module 6, Slide 7. Bullying is a global problem. Bullying is not a modern phenomenon, and it happens all over the world, although in different forms and with different degrees of harm to both individuals and societies. In recent years, international organizations have begun to gather and track evidence of bullying and report that it is on the rise in schools and other institutions of learning, and as a result presents serious obstacles to fulfilling children's human right to education. In 2017, UNESCO reported that worldwide 246 million children and adolescents are exposed to bullying or some form of violence at school every year. In reality, the number is likely to be much higher, as many cases are simply not reported. Research by the World Health Organization concludes that bullying has significant impacts on children's physical health, mental health, and quality of life. Module 6, Slide 8. Causes and effects of bullying. What does the research tell us? Why do people bully? Who are the victims? What is the long-term impact of bullying on individuals, communities, and societies? Answers to these questions, especially the first one, are complex. So let's begin with the why. Is bullying internally motivated? That is it part of human nature? Or is it socially driven? In other words, is it behavior that children learn from peers, families, and others they come into contact with? Unfortunately, bullying appears to be part of the human experience that manifests itself to some degree in most, if not all, cultures. But that in itself does not explain why some children and adults engage in bullying behavior and others do not. Some researchers, based on their observations, conclude that certain individuals in any group are naturally more aggressive than others, while other researchers argue that bullying is a learned behavior that is socially driven by factors such as poverty, prevalence of violence in the family, or a set of shared values that glorify power and strength over cooperation and inclusiveness. Current thinking tends to explain bullying through the eyes of the perpetrators as a way of gaining social status and power, not as a psychological abnormality. In other words, bullies do it because it works for them in their social group. Who are the victims? In most cases, the victims of bullying are those that are perceived by the dominant members of the social group as weak or different in physical appearance, in the way they dress, their personalities, their hairstyles, race, gender identity, or sexual orientation. The victims of bullying, whichever group they fall into, can be damaged for life in terms of health, self-esteem, academic, and career success. There's also a negative impact on the perpetrators because unless they are able to change their bullying behaviors, they may fail to benefit from the lifelong rewards of building empathy and healthy social relationships. In addition to the devastating impact of bullying on individuals, there is a profound social and economic cost to tolerating bullying, as many victims simply drop out, therefore are not enabled to reach their full potential as contributing members of society. Module 6, Slide 9. Why bullying is especially prevalent at school. What is it about school cultures that seem to invite bullying behaviors? Even children and teenagers who are not exposed to aggressive behaviors or violence at home may become bullies at school. Some say that this is because of their desire to fit into a social group or, worse, submitting to peer pressure to join exclusive cliques or gangs that require new members to exhibit violent behaviors in order to be accepted. Generally, bullying at school can be attributed to 4 major factors. Learner characteristics, that is, what children bring with them from home and community influences, including exposure to media violence. Physical environment of the school that fails to prevent acts of bullying, and, equally important, a social climate that tolerates, even rewards, aggressive attitudes and behaviors. And closely connected is the general approach of school management in recognizing and treating the problem through, for example, a bullying prevention policy, a set of school-wide ground rules for teachers and school staff to turn to when dealing with acts of bullying, a reporting system for victims and bystanders, and/or anti-bullying intervention programs that raise public awareness and guide specific action. Although such policies and programs may not stamp out bullying altogether, they do establish an authoritative position and set of regulations for members of the learning community to live by and, when necessary, take action. Some of the policies, actions, and interventions that schools around the world have put into practice to address bullying and other forms of school-based violence will be discussed next. As you listen, think about how social and emotional learning is connected to prevention of bullying. What actions your school has taken, and how well they have worked, and what more can be done over both the short and longer term. Module 6, Slide 10. In schools where bullying is endemic and frequently cited as the cause of physical abuse, depression, dropout, or in worst-case scenarios, self-harm or suicide, there is a critical need for urgent care that prioritizes immediate and forceful action to respond to and prevent repeated incidents. In these situations, the first step is to carry out a quick landscape assessment that provides answers to questions like, what is going on? Who are the perpetrators? Who are the victims? Where does the bullying take place? How often? And so on. On the basis of this basic situational snapshot, an urgent response action plan can be set into motion to quickly reduce incidents of bullying at school using tools such as video cameras, adult monitoring, increased counseling services, and teacher-led classroom discussions. In addition to these immediate interventions, the school counselor can train teachers, school personnel, and upper-level students as mentors, using methods and tools such as bystander training and friendship benches, so that students who have been victimized can choose to seek help from a variety of sources. It is critical for a victim to have someone they can talk to and who can offer support and options. The second step, and the one that is most often overlooked once visible signs of bullying have begun to decline, is to lay the groundwork for a longer-term, sustainable anti-bullying program by putting into place data-gathering tools, such as student surveys, testimonials, and anonymous reporting systems to collect hard evidence on the nature, frequency, and severity of the problem. Module 6, Slide 11. Research on anti-bullying interventions in schools around the world shows that urgent care responses have a very limited impact. While some programs claim to significantly reduce incidents of bullying over the short term, there is scant evidence to show that it has been prevented from recurring over the longer term. Ideally, in schools that may be said to be in crisis mode, planning for urgent care is quickly followed by or takes place at the same time as planning for a long-term, sustainable solution that not only reduces bullying incidents at the moment of intervention, but gets at the roots of the problem and sets into motion remedies that aim to change the culture of the school community into one where bullying is no longer cool or acceptable. To make this happen, use the results of the data collection to inform plan development. For example, in deciding what to prioritize and how to sequence interventions. If a school policy to prevent bullying is already in place, use the information to strengthen and reinforce implementation of the policy. If there is no policy in place, work with community leaders and parents to develop one. Then designate concrete steps to set into motion a complete transformation of the school environment. For example, through the creation of a school safe space and support to related activities such as music, art, and poetry. Also, introduce inclusive team sports, peace-building clubs, and other after-school activities. When causes are clearly related to problems in the surrounding communities such as gang violence, drugs, high crime rates, lack of safe recreational areas, and social and economic inequalities, consider establishing a school community outreach program to help dampen the bullying trend. A program might include, for example, interventions by religious and secular community leaders, parent outreach, high-profile performances, or school and community cleanups. Within the school buildings and grounds, conditions may call for a complete transformation of both the physical and social environment, together with the implementation of measures that support building specific SEL skills like resilience and self-esteem. Module 6, Slide 12. What does not work? Obviously, ignoring the symptoms and root causes of a growing and damaging problem, hoping that somehow bullying will go away, does not work. Yet, little or no response from school authorities and staff has long been the norm, largely because of the widely held assumption in many societies that bullying is normal, especially among adolescents, and is simply a part of growing up. Nor generally does relying solely on external solutions, such as comprehensive and often expensive anti-bullying programs that claim to reduce incidents of bullying in any context, social and physical conditions, cultural factors, and socioeconomic data from the surrounding community. Intervention programs that have been shown not to work include those that are delayed, inappropriate, or weak. For example, supervised conflict resolution between perpetrators and victims is ill-conceived because conflict resolution assumes two equal sides in a dispute. In bullying, only one side is the transgressor. Examples of other measures that do not work and may even have a reverse effect include severe disciplinary measures such as expulsion for minor incidents that could be dealt with constructively, and urgent care measures such as slogans, signs, or motivational speakers that are not followed up with long-term sustained actions, as discussed in the previous slide. Module 6, Slide 13. What do classroom teachers need to know and be able to do? Become familiar with national and state or district legal frameworks and official policies on bullying. Become familiar with, if you are not already, your school's policy as well as teacher guidelines and other relevant resources. Reach out to families and community leaders on how to construct better ways to prevent bullying in the school and in the community. Work in teams with other teachers, specialists, and parents to understand the root causes of bullying. Emphasize course content and methods that promote core SEL concepts and related behaviors. Make time for open discussions on bullying in the classroom. This best happens as a regular, recurring discussion or sharing time at the beginning or the end of the day. Finally, create an inclusive learning environment. Module 6, Slide 14. Peace from Within. Connecting SEL with anti-bullying programs. What matters most in developing a peace from within treatment for bullying is prevention. That is a long-term strategy integrated into the curriculum that values the development of students' internal moral compasses alongside their developing academic skills. From the perspective of what the scientists say, this means enhancing the executive functioning of the brain and building. Module 6, Slide 15. Tips for creating a bully-free learning environment. 1. Take steps to understand the type and frequency of bullying that's going on in your school and community. 2. Work with colleagues to develop a safe school plan that works in your context. The plan should include both urgent care and long-term solutions. Always keep in mind that any one of these actions taken alone is not likely to have significant and sustained impact. Consider including these elements in your plan. Reach out to parents and community leaders. Include bystander training and anonymous reporting systems. Involve students in shaping and implementing the plan. 3. Launch and sustain a high-visibility campaign to make your school a bully-free zone. 4. Make every classroom and learning space a place where SEL skills are developed and strengthened. Module 6, Slide 16. School policies on bullying. An example from Scotland. Many school systems around the world that have established specific policies, rules, and plans for responding to bullying have succeeded in reducing the frequency of reported incidents. Respect for All, the national approach to bullying for Scotland's children and young people, is grounded in 4 shared values: fairness, respect, equality, and inclusion. Respect for All provides guidance to schools in how to develop local policies and plans that are consistent with its shared vision for creating learning environments that are free from all forms of bullying and school-based violence. Module 6, Slide 17. Examples of strategies for dealing with bullying from around the world. These examples offer a range of different strategies in a wide range of situations. Given the intransigence of the problem, it's clear that strategies for prevention can and should start at a very young age, even though frequent and overt acts of bullying may not become apparent until children reach pre-adolescence. It's often the case that younger children are the victims of older ones in areas where children of different ages gather and mix socially, such as playgrounds, in transit to and from school, and of course at home and in communities. Overall, it's essential that school-based strategies, such as friendship benches and bystander training, be grounded in a school-wide action plan, which is in turn guided by a strong state or national legal framework that is well publicized and implemented throughout the system. Module 6, Slide 18. An example of student engagement from Trinidad and Tobago. When Jeremy Rodriguez was just 11 years old, his older sister came home in tears, confiding in her brother that she had been bullied repeatedly and never wanted to go back to school. From that moment on, Jeremy and his family have used their amazing talents to organize and mobilize students in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as in neighboring island nations in the Caribbean, to stand up and shout out against bullying, using live music performances, school rallies, social media, radio, and television. Let's listen.
Stop the bullying, that is not cool. Let's try to restore the love in each and every school. Take an oath or a pledge to break this trend, and together let us bring bullying to an end. All we need to do is love, live, laugh, and play. Stay calm and wear a smile to turn wrath away. Stop the bullying here in Trinidad, and remember that it's Jeremy who says so. Stop the bullying.
Think about how you and your colleagues could motivate and support students like Jeremy to use their talents and skills to take a stand against bullying, keeping in mind that raising awareness is just the start. To have a real impact, they must be followed up with plans and actions that bring about transformational change.
Stop the bullying. Stop the bullying.
On the Module 6, Slide 19, the takeaway. Bullying is defined as unwanted aggression that is or has the potential to be repeated over time. Bullying can be verbal, physical, relational, or cyber, among others, and is most often perpetrated within peer groups. Bullying is a serious global problem with damaging impacts on individuals, communities, and whole societies. Current thinking on the causes of bullying tends toward considering it to be mostly a socially driven behavior. Successful responses to bullying are locally implemented, data-driven, and sustainable. Students, parents, and teachers all need to be actively involved. Natural human capacity. Module 6, Slides 20, 21, and 22. As in the previous modules, choose the best way to respond to each item. You can check your answers on Slide 22, or if you're watching the video version of Module 6, look for the answers at the end of the presentation. for empathy in ways that build strong core emotional and social awareness skills, and thereby construct a living, breathing, inclusive learning environment where there is no space for bullying, where it is not considered normal, acceptable, or tolerable, where bullying, in other words, becomes a thing of the past. Module 6, Slide 23. Think like a teacher. Design an intervention for treating bullying that will work in your classroom. Work with your students. Begin by finding out what is going on, what kinds of bullying, how often, and so on. Then discuss what the class as a whole can do about it. Finally, assign specific responsibilities to yourself, as well as to individual students, monitors, and to the whole group. This activity works best if you discuss your plan with colleagues and supervisors before implementing it in an actual class. It can be introduced at the beginning of a term or year as a prevention measure based on previous incidents of bullying in your school. What might happen? Or in the middle, based on actual incidents, what is going on? Prevention measures should be suggested by the class as a whole, using a brainstorming technique to establish up to 5 positive actions students can take. For example, always treat each other with respect. Offer a helping hand when someone needs one. Module 6, Slide 24. What's next? That's it for now, but not for long. We hope you have enjoyed the basic Learning to Get Along course and have already begun to try out some of the ideas and activities for integrating SEL into your classroom or learning space. If so, we hope you have begun to observe its impact on your students' well-being as well as on their learning processes and outcomes. Thank you for joining us, and stand by for news of new modules on learning to get along globally and how social and emotional learning contributes beyond the classroom to the movement to mitigate climate change and protect our planet from further harm for generations to come. Module 6, Self-Checkout Answers. Number 1. Asma's story illustrates an example of cyberbullying. Number 2. Which of the following best describes bullying behavior? All of the above. Number 3. One of the factors which has been identified as a cause of bullying is the desire to achieve social status within one's peer group. Number 4. In which parts of the world are reported incidents of bullying on the rise? All regions and countries. Number 5. Why is bullying at school a problem for all students, even those who are not victims or perpetrators? It creates a stressful, unsafe learning environment for everyone. Number 6. What matters most in developing a peace-from-within treatment for bullying that is sustainable over time? Locally developed, evidence-based prevention measures.